All right, so there's a new book out this week that most of the media is talking about. It was highly anticipated. It purports to tell the story of how the White House and the Democrats, quote, covered up the story of Joe Biden's cognitive decline, and the implicit premise of that, which they are all very eager to promote, is a fairy tale, namely that the Biden White House covered it up, and therefore the media had no way of knowing. It's a book by CNN's Jake Tapper, who, as I said, was actively involved in this cover-up. He was the one demanding and insisting, as we'll show you, that nobody talk about Biden's cognitive decline because it wasn't real and wasn't true, and he claimed it was just a stutter. And he accused those who brought up the cognitive decline or pointed it out not only of spreading right-wing disinformation, but also cruelly stigmatizing children with a stutter by mocking what he said was Joe Biden's stutter. And so Jake Tapper writing a book pretending to have uncovered the cover-up that he participated in would be exactly if Nancy Pelosi wrote a book denouncing the immoral corruption of members of Congress who profit off the stock market. You'd be like, what? How does Nancy Pelosi of all people, write a book on the immorality and the corruption of having House members get very rich by trading on the stock market while they're in office? It would be absurd. Everybody would laugh at that. That's how people should receive Jake Tapper's book as well. Or not necessarily the book itself, but the fact that Jake Tapper is an author of it. Here from CNN is a announcement of the book, new book on Biden by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, reports a, quote, cover-up about Biden's mental decline. So this has been coming for a long time. Now, one of the really interesting things to recall here is there's an excerpt in The New Yorker by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. It's an excerpt from their book, obviously designed to generate interest in it. And it's describing this passage is, I'm sure many of you remember, there was a huge glitzy fundraiser in Hollywood for Joe Biden in the middle of 2024. And that was when Obama had to lead Biden off the stage because he obviously and blatantly didn't know where he was. And a lot of people said, Joe Biden's just lost. He has no idea where he is. That's why Obama had to take him by the arm the way you do a relative in a nursing home, and you kind of help them walk, you guide them to make sure, they're a little confused. You make sure that's what Obama did to Biden. And here's the video just for your memory. It was June of 2024. There's Obama and Biden on stage. And Obama's trying to walk off, but Biden's not really doing so. And he's just kind of standing there, aimless, not really sure where he is. Biden's waving, Obama's waving, trying to get off, and then he grabs the grandfather by the wrist, puts his hand on his back, and kind of guides him off stage. Because otherwise Obama would still be there. Biden was never going to leave that stage. He had no idea where he was, how to get off. And we've seen that many, many times. It's by far the first time, not the first time that we've seen Joe Biden obviously completely lost about where he's supposed to go, where he is. And when people pointed this out, when people pointed out that Joe Biden was blatantly confused and had to have Obama guide him off the stage, the media and the White House in unison went berserk and started claiming that anybody who looked at this video and used it that way was using what they called a cheap fake, a play on the word deep fake, which is when you actually alter the video, but they were trying to claim this is a video taken out of context. It is, if you look at it from different camera angles, you get a completely different impression. It was about 2 weeks after Biden had that moment at the D-Day celebrations in France with the other EU leaders, where he just had to, where the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, had to kind of walk over to him after Macron told her to and pull Biden back into the picture. And when we saw him in Brazil, too, when he went to the Amazon, he just gave a press conference and he thought he was in the White House, so he just turned around and started walking back, but he walked into the jungle, to the Amazon. He didn't know where he was. He was often lost and confused. And everybody saw this. The polls reflected people overwhelmingly believed he had cognitive impairment, was too old to run for re-election, that he wasn't capable of doing the job, and the only people who pretended not to know were the media. And that fundraiser in particular is just so telling of the whole fraud that took place here, because in their book, in this new book, they excerpt this part of the story about what happened that night, namely George Clooney, who has been a huge Democratic fundraiser. He was at this fundraiser for Joe Biden. He's known Joe Biden forever. This is what happened when he walked up to Joe Biden, according to this book. Quote, how Joe Biden handed the presidency to Donald Trump. So they're blaming Biden for this, which he certainly deserves a lot of the blame, but by no means the only part of the blame. And the book says this, quote, at a fateful event last summer, Barack Obama, George Clooney, and others were stunned by Biden's weakness and confusion. Why did he and his advisors decide to conceal his condition from the public and the campaign for re-election? It wasn't concealed from the public. The public saw it. You can go back in time and see all sorts of people. I was one of them saying, Joe Biden's like, he doesn't know where he is. It was so obvious. It was the media who covered it up and attacked everybody who pointed it out as being right-wing disinformation agents, probably Russian disinformation agents engaging in cheap fakes. The only people who covered it up were the media in unison with the White House. Nothing was concealed from the public. This is what happened according to the book when George Clooney went up to Biden. Quote, thank you for being here, the president said to guests as he shuffled past them. Thank you for being here. So that was the phrase he used with everybody. And that's because he didn't recognize anybody. And then it says, Clooney felt a knot form in his stomach as the president approached him. Biden looked at him and said, thank you for being here. He said, thank you for being here. And then an assistant aide told the president, you know George, trying to gently remind him of who was in front of him, George Clooney. Yeah, the president said to one of the most recognizable men in the world, the host of this lucrative fundraiser. Thank you for being here. Hi, Mr. President, Clooney says. How are you, the president replied. How was your trip, Clooney asked. It was fine, the president said. It seemed clear that the president had not recognized Clooney. Quote, it was not okay, recalled the Hollywood VIP who had witnessed the moment. Quote, that thing, the movement where you recognize someone you know, especially a famous person who's doing a fucking fundraiser for you, it was delayed. It was uncomfortable. George Clooney, the aide clarified for the president. Oh yeah, Biden said. Hi, George. Clooney was shaken to his core. The president hadn't recognized him, a man he had known for years. Clooney had expressed concern about Biden's health before. A White House aide had told him a few months before that they were working on getting the president to take longer steps when he walked, but obviously the problem went far beyond his gait. This was much grayer. Now, after that event, maybe a month or so after, George Clooney wrote an op-ed in the New York Times which created a lot of stir. It was something most Democrats were afraid to say, but George Clooney is a very loyal Democrat, always has been, big fundraiser of the Democratic Party, the Clintons, Obama, Biden. And so he wrote this article in July of 2024, headlined in the New York Times, headlined, George Clooney, I love Joe Biden, but we need a new nominee. And this is what he wrote, quote, it's devastating to say it, but the Joe Biden I was with 3 weeks ago at the fundraiser was not the Joe big effing deal Biden of 2010. He wasn't even the Joe Biden of 2020. He was the same man we all witnessed at the debate. Now, keep in mind that debate was the turning point where they were all insisting, no, there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden at all. He's absolutely totally fine. And it was only once he went to that debate and practically drooled on himself, constantly lost track of what he was saying in the middle of sentences, just kind of drifted off, put words together that were completely nonsensical and had that vacant stare of somebody whose brain's not functioning the whole time, basically looking 90 or 100. It was only then that this all became untenable, and it was only then the media started saying, oh my God, we didn't know. It looks like Joe Biden's cognitively impaired. I never would have imagined that. This is the first time we're seeing it. even though Clooney ended up admitting that he saw it at that fundraiser when people were saying it and still getting attacked by the media for it. Jake Tapper appeared on one of the CNN programs today. I don't know who this host is. They're all interchangeable and poorly watched. But he was talking about his book, promoting his book, hawking his book, as though, again, he was the one who uncovered the story when he was the one who helped conceal it, as we're about to show you. And they obviously have a couple parts of their book they're trying to spread in the media, generate interest. And here's the little tidbit that he said.
I'm curious about what his advisors were saying at the time as you look at this, as you reported out this book.
So the White House physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, was telling White House aides that President Biden's deterioration of his spine, the degeneration, was so significant that if he fell one more time, that he might have to be in a wheelchair and serve in a wheelchair for his second term. But everybody pushed off the notion that he used a wheelchair until after the election. This is all part of a larger whole where the Biden White House tried to hide the extent of his deterioration, both physical and cognitive, as much as possible. In fact, as we all know, we all saw.
Do you see? That's the whole formulation. This was all part of the White House's effort to cover up and conceal what was actually going on with Biden. They're turning themselves into the victims. They're basically in the posture of when they all circulated the lies about WMD because Cheney was leaking it and Paul Wolfowitz and that whole crew. And then afterwards, when it turned out there were no WMDs there, they weren't like, oh yeah, we were to blame. Actually, the New York Times did take a little blame and said we probably should have been more skeptical of these assertions without evidence. Oh, you think? But mostly it was them trying to depict themselves as victims. Like, yeah, we had the wool pulled over our eyes by this government that we trusted. They're back 20 years later making the same exact excuse. Yeah, we spread a bunch of falsehoods and lies, but it wasn't our fault. We're as angry as you are. We're the victims of the exact same thing. Except, again, they were the ones who knew it as well as anybody because they were at the White House talking to these people all the time. And it's a friend of the show, Barry Eisler, said on Twitter today, the Jake Tappers of the world are in a really difficult position. They basically have two choices, none of them good. Either number one, you admit that you knew and were complicit in the cover-up to try and make sure Donald Trump lost and Joe Biden won, which is the truth. Or number two, you admit that even though you call yourself a journalist, you are incapable of noticing or discovering a fact about Joe Biden that ordinary people who aren't paid to do that work all saw for themselves with their own eyes. So either you're corrupt or just incredibly ignorant and dumb. Let me play the rest of this.
To hide the extent of his deterioration, both physical and cognitive, as much as possible. In fact, as we all know, we all saw, as his shuffling gait got worse and worse from 2003 to 2004, they started putting aides around.
He meant from his shuffling gait got worse from 2023 to 2024, and I want you to remember that because you're about to see Jake Tapper attacking people who were noticing it at the time.
2004, they started putting aides around him as he walked to Marine One, the helicopter. That was to kind of hide from public view how bad his gait was, how bad his walking was, his shuffling, and also in case he stumbled again to make sure somebody was there. And this is just of a piece of an overall campaign to try to conceal from the American people the extent to which the president was really struggling to do his job.
I can't tell you how sick that makes me to watch. I mean, these are the people who perpetrated the deceit and the crime. And they're there saying, yeah, we wrote a book because we're so angry that the White House covered this up and made it impossible for us to know in the media what was going on with Joe Biden. I mean, you would see him walk on off the stage. You would see him shuffling. But that wasn't even the worst. Nobody really cares if there's some physical deterioration. I mean, if he was old and he had to sometimes be in a wheelchair, so what? FDR had polio and was in a wheelchair, and most of the media knew, and they kept it from the public because it was just a physical condition. It didn't affect his brain or his judgment. The real issue is that Joe Biden's brain was melting, not that his spine was degenerating. Here is a compilation from our friends at Gravian of all the times that Jake Tapper attacked people for having suggested there's something wrong with Joe Biden over the years. And the first one is Laura Trump, who said that in an interview or an event that when she watches Joe Biden, she feels sorry for him, and she's saying, come on, Joe, get out the sentence, finish the sentence. And here's what Jake Tapper said it was.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You have no. I can't. It's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
President Biden embraces his stutter, talking about it, while Trump mocks it, exaggerates it, belittles it. He's sharp physically. I mean, mentally.
Yeah.
I think the question is physically, right?
Right.
More so?
Right.
And the guy who's his chief opponent is only 3 or 4 years younger than him.
Exactly.
I mean, you have questioned President Biden's age, mental fitness, ability to lead. Of those supporting Biden, you said, quote, shame on all of you pretending everything is okay. You're leading us and him into a disaster.
This is all 2024. Here he is interviewing Dean Phillips, the Democratic congressman from Minnesota, who ran against Biden, even though the DNC wouldn't allow a primary. And he said to Laura Trump, you're talking about Biden's inability to get out a sentence? He has a stutter that nobody ever noticed before. He has a stutter. How dare you? Do you have no shame? How does that make children with a stutter feel, knowing that you're mocking them? And she was like, what? I didn't even know he had a stutter. I've seen him talk for a long time. I didn't even know he had a stutter. I was talking about his cognitive decline, his inability to think and reason and speak. And Jake Tapper, who now has written a book purporting to tell the whole story, blow the lid off this campaign of deceit, said to her, oh, yeah, okay, I'm not even going to let you question his cognitive ability. You have no basis whatsoever for doing that. And then here's the same thing he did with Dean Phillips.
Younger than him.
Exactly.
I mean, you have questioned President Biden's age, mental fitness, ability to lead. Of those supporting Biden, you said, quote, shame on all of you pretending everything is okay. You're leading us and him into a disaster. Do you worry that you damaged him at all? I don't doubt that you got hugs and handshakes behind closed doors today, and maybe even publicly, some of them because they like you personally. But I've heard a lot of really nasty stuff about you from your Democratic colleagues.
Sure.
I mean, just like, what is he thinking? Exercise in narcissism. I mean, false claims to the Wall Street Journal about President exercise.
Do you see what Jake Tapper is doing here? He's vicious. I mean, he's so visibly angry. He viciously attacks anybody who questioned Joe Biden's cognitive fitness. So again, everybody around Jake Tapper knew. The whole public knew. He said Laura Trump was attacking and making life difficult for children with stutters, and telling Dean Phillips, yeah, you may have some friends who said you're great, but the people I have heard from absolutely hate you. But the whole time people are telling him, look, Joe Biden has a problem with cognitive decline. And Jake Tapper was one of the primary people in the media, not just covering it up and denying it, but aggressively attacking and maligning the character of anyone who was raising this as recently as last year, presumably when he was working on his book, or at least anticipating the book. I think actually they announced the book in early 2025. It usually takes a lot longer than 3-4 months to write a book like that, but they're probably rushing to do it so they could be first. So maybe he wasn't writing the book at the time, but this is all what Jake Tapper is purporting to blow the lid off of what he was doing.
In narcissism. I mean, false claims to the Wall Street Journal about President Biden's mental fitness and acuity. He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible, but I don't understand the outrage. Quote, behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping, unquote. The Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs. Beyond the headline,
So there was a extremely long and well-reported article in the Wall Street Journal in July or August of last year Obviously, the Wall Street Journal is a respected newspaper, especially among them. And it described all these people saying, Joe Biden's brain is fried. You know, like, you sit in a room with him, he can't even follow a conversation. Like, sometimes he's better than other times, but often he's just like, doesn't know where he is. He can't follow anything. And you had like Kevin McCarthy went on the record, most of them off the record, you know, anonymously, but including Democrats. And did you see the snotty little way that Jake Tapper tried to disparage the story by saying this comes from the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by News Corp, which is controlled by the Murdochs, trying to act as if the Wall Street Journal's reporting was the partisan hit job rather than what Jake Tapper was doing.
The Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs. Beyond the headline, there is some critical nuance here. The article is mostly based on observations of Republicans, with former Speaker Kevin McCarthy the only one going on the record. They do note in the article that most of the criticism comes from Republicans. Have you heard any concerns from anyone who has met with President Biden about him seeming a little slower?
No.
The Russians are trying to make us and the public not trust our election integrity.
So he did blame it on the Russians, of course. And there he's saying the Wall Street Journal is only interviewing Republicans about it. Then he goes and asks Chris Coons, the Democrat from Delaware, Biden's home state, oh, have you noticed this? And he's like, no, I haven't noticed anything. Biden seems great. Now here's the cover of the book. It's called Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. Can you imagine being Jake Tapper and having done all this? And then I'm going to write a book about the people who covered this up, like those people over there. Because I'm really angry about how they deceived the country. The country wasn't deceived. The country knew it all. The only ones pretending not to know were people in the media like Jake Tapper. Here's a news story. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the growing recession fears are, quote, media-driven. We've all seen how mainstream media often manipulates public opinion. We just spent an hour showing you on that. They push their narratives that serve their interests. They tell one side or one part of a story. That's why I started the show and then partnered with Ground News. They're a platform built on the belief that you deserve to see the whole truth without corporate filters or political censorship. For every story, their app and website pulls in every single report from across the political spectrum. So all I have to do is swipe through coverage with tags exposing each outlet's bias, credibility, and corporate influence to find out the facts they're ignoring and why. So take that story I mentioned about Scott Bessent and Trump's tariffs. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called out the media for fueling unnecessary recession fears because the fundamentals of our economy are strong. But when you look at who's actually reporting on it, every single outlet is coming from the right that's promoting that narrative. There's almost no coverage from mainstream and liberal media on that. And you know there's something strange going on when a story is being actively ignored by half the media. That's why Ground News built one of their most important tools, the blind spot feed. It exposes stories that either side of the political spectrum isn't reporting on, so you can actually see the world as it is, not just the version they want you to see. Ground News is rebuilding trust in news by giving power back to the public rather than concentrating them in the hands of media elites. That's why they're completely independent and funded by readers like us. But I got my viewers 40% off the same Vantage plan I've been using to get unlimited access to all of their features. So you can go to ground.news/GG or scan that QR code and check out the link in the description, and it will take you right to them. If you value what we do here on this show, I think you'll find Ground News a very worthwhile resource. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.